you feeling?
Okay, we are officially on air. Elated but exhausted, dude. So last time we spoke was on Noble Rot, and I was maybe 12 hours prior to me doing a cross country road trip. I literally just finished the road trip 28 minutes ago.
What are you on right now? What substances?
I never took your advice with Red Bull.
Oh, you made it without Red Bull. Well, congratulations, I suppose.
No Red Bull needed. I only did coffee every day, and I had one cream soda one
Nice.
day. Yeah, which was a real treat, man. I got to tell you.
How many Subways did you have?
Okay, so you're right. That is a smart strategy, but I didn't do Subway at all. What I instead did was I would find a couple hours in advance of lunch, I would pull up like, I'm going to be in this general zone during lunch where it's a medium to small size town, get on Yelp and search sandwich. And I could always find like, sometimes it wasn't fast food, it was like a restaurant, but you could still find a decent sandwich in each place.
Okay, okay. So, how many podcasts? Which podcasts? How many hours worth of podcast?
Probably 20 hours worth of podcasts. I have a couple recommendations. Um, I wanted to, you had suggested spend that time learning something new, which is
Yeah,
great advice. But I also realized I haven't really been listening to podcasts for the last couple of years.
something
Um,
new. You learn
yeah,
something new.
so I wanted to like reinvest and learn kind of what's the style of content that people are producing in these recent years. And I listened to a couple of like investigative journalistic type stuff that was really, really good. One was called um, Love Janessa. Are you familiar
Love
with this?
Janessa. No.
Love Janessa was one. Caitlin's Baby is another one that's currently running. And Scamanda was the third one.
Okay. And what did you learn about podcast? What the current state of podcasting?
It's really in a good place. And you and I, if we really want to do this for a living, we could invest heavily. And there's like a ton of different stories we could tell in different ways than we're doing it currently.
Are you talking about true crime?
It's a little bit, I don't know if you would classify those things as true crime. Like nobody gets murdered in these. But Scamanda, for example, is probably the most popular one. And they're making a TV show. I think it's going to be on Hulu or ABC that's coming out soon about it. But it's basically this girl in Northern California, like right outside of Silicon Valley, maybe San Jose or something, um, who lied about having cancer. And all in a financial ruse to collect money from her local church and anybody associated with it.
Uh, we then could do a podcast on the fast life and rich times of who? I mean, the best one, of course, is Conan Hayes.
There's a total that's timely, it's
Yeah.
current. Like, that's a great one. I mean, honestly, we don't need to outline it here on the show, but there are endless stories that we could do 6 episode series. Um, I don't know like if it would have as much broad market appeal, but it might,
Yeah.
as something like Scamanda. But this girl Scamanda, Scam Amanda,
Yeah.
she did this for a decade. And it was this really interesting little conundrum because medical records are, of course, confidential. So anybody who is suspicious about whether or not she
Couldn't
was fake
access.
couldn't access it. And it is gross to accuse somebody of faking cancer.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
people just had this repulsion to even bring it up. And she was able to masquerade for literally a year and
10 years, you
collected,
said.
I'm sorry, a decade. Yeah. And collected hundreds of thousands of dollars easily and only did 18 months jail time and is out and is probably going to just do it again.
Did it make you want to fake cancer?
Definitely not, but it makes you realize there's a lot of ways to scam people out of money.
I mean, the problem with faking cancer, I feel, and any listener will know, I'm not a believer in karma at all. But that's one of those ones I feel where you fake cancer, you get cancer. If there's one karma loophole, it is the cancer karma loophole.
I mean, look, absolutely. And once it comes out, you will be vilified for the rest of your life. I mean,
And mocked.
I mean,
You'll be mocked that you got it. Of course you got it. Duh.
yeah,
Look at you.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
already got our sympathy once, not given to you again.
So the other really interesting one, Love Janessa, um, this girl who was like a model. I think she was doing like, a light porn through cam girl type stuff on the internet. But she ends up getting rid of a computer at some point, and that computer ends up where a lot of computer parts do, which is in West Africa. So if you go, your computer is full of toxics, and so you can't just go bury it in a landfill because who knows how that will contaminate the environment and anybody who lives locally. But we are going to ship it into West Africa, and
Let's
they
go
can live.
contaminate West Africa.
Exactly.
No problem there.
So all these there's all these markets that exist, like a flea market in West Africa, where people go and pick parts and then rebuild computers, and then they sell refurbished MacBook or whatever in these flea markets in West Africa. Well, what they also do is steal your information that you left on any hard drives. So this original girl, Janessa, who had left some of this stuff on her hard drive, somebody goes and they find it and they get all of these images of her. Well, those images have now become the most used image as a catfish. So now these catfishers in West Africa are messaging you on DM through Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and using her likeness as the imagery to get you involved in a quote relationship with this beautiful woman. And then they end up scamming you out of money. And you think, and like, it is the number one image used. It's been used millions and millions of times by different scammers. She's the most catfished image on the internet.
Is she does she like her fame and her notoriety? Is she
Well,
leaning into it? Clearly she
so
is. She's doing a podcast.
well, that's the whole point of the podcast is they set out to find the original, the girl herself to see if she even knows whether or not her image is being used. And so you have to go to Ghana and I forget the other country. There's two countries in West Africa that are like prolific for doing this, but they have to go there and meet some of these. Turns out it's organized crime. Like it's not just one dude with, you
Random.
know,
No, for sure.
there's layers. There's
Yeah,
like
they figured this out.
there's a guy who's dedicated just towards photoshopping imagery, because when the dupe or when the person who's being duped suspects like, hey, is this a real person? Take a photo of yourself with a current newspaper to prove that you're actually you.
Got
Well,
it.
they've got a guy off to the side who's specifically doing that type of stuff. Like he'll Photoshop it real quick, send it over, and then complete the transaction.
Uh,
So
two notes on this one. Did you read about the woman who got scammed by the by Brad Pitt falling in love with
I
her?
did, and I saw those
Yeah.
Photoshops were terrible.
They were terrible. It made me feel really bad about that. But what also made me feel bad, but also made me laugh and also made me think, oh, this is a good time. Did you see where you also sent the DMs or somebody had captured Eddie Rothman uh commenting to one of the bots? Did you see that?
No,
Or is that
no,
just to me?
I
Yeah, it's
didn't.
really good. It's like bot girl says like, "Hey, I think you're sexy," or whatever they say, right? And Eddie's like responds, "Are you talking to me or can everyone see this?" Or something like that. Or are you talking to everyone? And then there's another one that comes up where he's just confused again. Like he's never giving in, but he's actually communicating with the bot of like, "Wait, I don't understand what's happening here."
Was it all Photoshop to make it you think that Eddie was having that conversation, or was this actually from his
No,
phone?
I think somebody it was a comment on it was like comments, it wasn't the DM, sorry. It was comments underneath a post.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it was good. It was good stuff. I mean, a classic, like there was Eddie wasn't being creepy. There was nothing creepy about it. It was just sort of classic older person, not really understanding what's happening out there.
Those are the best. Or
I
like
mean,
when they
and
when
or the
they
worst.
type in back on the Facebook days when they would type in as their status what they're actually searching for. So
Yeah.
they'd accidentally publish their search of something creepy, like young teen girls in bikinis or something, and that's
Yeah.
the guy's status.
Yep. Old
Um,
people and technology.
it's amazing.
Laughs. But we're gonna be at the pointy end of that real soon. We're gonna be mocked by our children and grandchildren sooner than later. So we shouldn't begin laughing right now.
That's a good point. I'm going to reserve my
Yep.
judgment.
Yep.
Well, welcome back. It is the grit. It's the final day of January, January 31st,
Woo.
2025.
Can you believe it? The first month of this new year in the books, basically.
It happens to us every year.
Yeah.
And it's also the kickoff of the WSL 2025 season. We completed one day at Pipeline. Chaz Smith, did you watch?
I did find myself accidentally watching. Did you watch while you were on the road? You had endless hours with nothing to do but watch. Did you
Well,
watch?
it would have been 30 hours of podcast instead of 20, but I spent one entire day driving across Texas watching the WSL event. It is the best way. It's the best way to do both things. That drive is boring, so you need a little bit of entertainment. That entertainment doesn't warrant your full attention or you staring at the screen the whole time. So looking ahead, putting it on cruise control, and just listening off to the side and then glancing down when people catch waves is the perfect way.
For the listener who missed the opening day of Pipeline, it must have been one of the worst opening days in Pipeline's history. There was a couple good waves at the start, a couple of good backdoor. I don't know if they could even be called good. Couple of okay backdoor waves at the start, and then it went completely tiny. It went Filipe Toledo sized. Filipe Toledo, in fact, won his heat doing an air reverse. There was airs, there was turns, there was little barrel.
I had a really an epiphany that I'm going to make a bold prediction with right now.
The World Surf League is more popular than ever because of understandable pipeline.
No,
Oh,
but check this one out. And I'm not even joking. Felipe Toledo, our 2025 Pipe Pro champion.
oh, I mean, easy. The forecast is awful for the rest of it. I feel that the fates talking about our aforementioned karma that I don't believe in. Uh, couple things with karma though. Fate and Cancer getting cancer, and then also Dahui regularly getting pumping surf, the World Surf League for the last what 3 years since Kelly won, right? When did Kelly win?
Kelly won in 2021, I believe.
So I'm going to say the last 3 years have been maybe a day or two good in there, but overall pretty bleak, right?
They've had a good day. Like Barron won in good conditions last year for
Yes.
sure.
They've had a good day, but they've not had a good contest.
Yeah.
And this contest window, though, seems to be the worst yet. I mean, the fact that they ran 2 days ago in that surf is testament to how downright terrible the forecast is. Because it was like it honestly barreled a couple times in the early rounds, and that was it. There was no more barrels to be had. It was straight, yeah, backdoor turns.
It wasn't pipe, but I'll tell you what, and it could just be because of the
You were bored.
condition, yeah, the environment that I was watching in, that I enjoyed it more than I would have at home. But I really enjoyed it. It wasn't pipe, and I don't enjoy it as much as pipe, but everybody was actually really ripping. Like it was a very rippable style of wave, and there was some kind of consequence. It wasn't tiny, like there was overhead barrels, and then they were ripping. Like seeing them, I don't know. I just never realized how rippable of a wave backdoor could be, I guess.
I'm going to counter your exuberance with the fact that I was also home watching it. I had better things to do. And I realized it was hard for me to turn it off and do my other stuff. And that's the moment I realized we all have Stockholm Syndrome. We have all been, those of us particularly, or anyone, but in the surf media who like kind of have to pay attention to it because it's a job, for sure. Our minds, part of our minds are turned to mush. We hear Joe Turpel's voice. I have no doubt that there's some kind of backmasking, secret, subliminal thing going on in there just to hook you. Because I had the toughest time turning it off, and it was awful to watch. It was unwatchable, unlistenable. And there I was sitting and like watching another heat, thinking, oh, I guess I'll turn it off at the start of the next heat. Then getting halfway through another heat and be like, but just dumb as I've ever been in my life. Was sitting there watching it, not doing important things, and thinking, dumb, the surfing, watching it, like brain gone.
What is backmasking?
You don't remember backmasking?
No.
Backmasking was the controversy of the 80s when metal bands, or I think Led Zeppelin was accused of doing it too, would have secret messages on their records that when you played them backwards, so you spun the record backwards or played the tape cassette backwards, you would hear satanic messages.
I do remember that. I just didn't know that. I've never heard that name before.
Backmasking.
I
Yep.
like it.
Yep.
Did that name exist in the 80s or did they invent that later?
Yeah, I think that was. I think that's what when people were up in arms about it, that's what it was called.
In-
The backmasking they're doing, just
Interesting.
polluting kids. But that's what
Interesting.
the
Well,
WSL is doing.
you're onto something because I was compelled in the same way to where I couldn't turn it off. And I had the exact same thought. Like the podcast series that I was listening
It was
to
way better.
was very good. And I had to stop it to watch the WSL. And so I got to a heat that I didn't think I thought I didn't want to watch. And then I was hooked and I just had to watch. And I ended up watching basically every single heat that day.
And it's weird because it's not, if you question your motives, either in real time or after the fact, it is not because you're hoping to see any extraordinary performance, right? I will grant you, yes, like backdoor going to a kind of rippable, because the way the day was too, right? It was like a super weird swell direction that I've never seen backdoor look that way. It looked like kind of a sort of a more powerful version of lowers, right? That ended on a
I
shelf.
mean, I don't know. I wouldn't say lowers, but yeah, a more powerful version of something, but it was rippable.
Yeah, like snapper maybe. I don't know, something. It's a sort of pipeline that I had never seen before. All to say I wasn't watching because of that. People were ripping. I wasn't watching because of that. I wasn't watching because of what Turpel or the crew was saying. I was just watching and I had zero idea why. Like
Mm.
I would convince myself kind of, well, it's important as much as we, talk the World Surf League. It's important that we kind of keep up and I can come on the podcast on Friday somewhat knowledgeable about what went down in professional surfing that day. But no, I'm just deluding myself that that's why I'm doing it. I'm hooked somehow and I think it's sinister.
And partially because of Survival League.
That too, except Survival League doesn't kick in until, of course, I Survival League is, and if those, I think it's too late. We should have pumped it better on the signups because I think it's too late to sign up now. But the second chance league will be coming soon. But yeah, like the what, you gotta get to the round of 32 anyway. So sure, I watched my surfer make it to the round of 32, but now I got to watch the round of 32. And I guess that's going to be my excuse. Speaking of, who did you pick? You went with everyone else and picked John Florence.
No, I did not. I went with Kanoa Igarashi.
Good. I went sneaky time too. I went Jordy Smith.
Dude, Jordy's my pick for a world title this year.
I mean, I got him out of the way quick and easy. I feel that Jordy, nobody will pick him at pipe, or very few people will pick him at pipe. If I get my win out of Jordy there, I move on. I don't know where else you pick Jordy on tour, but I totally hear you that he is a title threat this year.
I mean, he's way past his prime. He should have won a world title the first couple of years he was on tour. And then he was floundering for the last few years until last year. And people should have considered him for Pipe because I feel like he semifinaled last year at Pipe and he did well at Sunset as well. I think he finished seventh at the end of the year, but he still wasn't a headline story.
No,
Like nobody even remembers that he finished seventh probably. But Jordy just it was basically just because of a free surf clip that he posted in Hawaii a week ago. I'm like, man, he looks as good as ever. And then he posted another one today, I think, saying, this is my session down the beach after I won my heat. And again, it looked as good as anything I've seen anybody else do, plus an element of power and explosiveness that nobody else has. So Jordy's problem in the past has always been consistency. He'll have some big results throughout the year, but it's not consistent. I mean, I've been saying this for a long time, but if he doesn't do it now, he won't be able to do it
next
in the
year.
future.
Oh.
Yeah, this is kind of like this is it.
I think for if in the World Surf League gets any pulses at any of the waves that can go big through the year, that'll knock Filipe out of those events. And then if Cloudbreak is big or big-ish, then Felipe's done, right? If all of those have to stay baby sized for Filipe to win. But without Filipe, then you basically have either Jack Robinson or Jordy. And I'm going to say Griffin is not a threat this year. I don't know why. I just got a feeling that twice or yeah, once bitten, twice shy, twice bitten, three times shy, that
Well,
he's not going to make it.
he wasn't a threat. He didn't win his first round heat. I think he might have got third actually. He looked good up on his feet, but he just wasn't. Let's see. Yeah, he had Leonardo Fioravanti, and then Ian Gentile won that heat in a buzzer beater. So yeah, that's not a bad call actually with the Griff. And
I
then
just think I think he's gonna have a third season slump. Like it's
it
gonna
makes
take him a
sense.
while to mentally pull around, and then I mean the exhaustion of the last two. Remember, he was like the favorite, the
Yeah.
fan favorite to win at lower trestles in front of the home crowd twice in a row, and blew it both times. And I would think that that's a sort of heavy burden on the mentals.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's an interesting thing to analyze. The other thing that you mentioned about Felipe, the fact that it's running at Cloudbreak, while he had almost a lock at lowers, all he had to do was make it into the top five. If he was in fifth, he still had a lock at lowers. The exact opposite is true at Cloudbreak. There's almost put anybody else on tour against him at Cloudbreak, and I would almost bet on the other person no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously if it's big, but even if it's small, like Cloudbreak is not like I mean, I suppose unless they move it to restaurants or something like that, like where he can flash his air skill. But there's any size at that wave, if there's any size at any of the waves with size all year, poor Felipe, you saw his post or the World Surf League post on Instagram. I think Derek wrote about it on Beach Grit. They posted his 10-point ride at Backdoor. You see that?
No, I saw that you guys wrote about it, but I didn't see the post.
Oh, so the World Surf League posted, I think it was from 2016, I want to say, a 10-point ride from Felipe backdoor. And it's a small wave, right? Like it's a deep barrel, but a very small wave. And this is not Beach Grit commentariat. This is not Surf Splendor's commentariat, neither the Grit nor Noble Rots, nothing. This is the World Surf League's own comments. And it is 100% like, I mean, the comment on a scale of 1 to 100, that wave is still not a 10. Summed it up the best, but everyone just like that is a tiny wave, da 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 da, like making fun of him. Where no matter how Felipe Toledo's in the would turn out the noise, and I don't believe the haters, and they're just being haters and all that stuff. Every bit of this completely has to, it's in every one of his circles now. Like the narrative of him being afraid of small waves, or sorry, afraid of big waves, is everywhere. It is not a hater talking point.
Well, do you follow WSL Brazil's Instagram feed?
I don't.
You should check it out. It's got a lot of fodder for Beach Grit if you actually wanted it. Um, it's so pro Brazil, so patriotic, it almost verges on racism. And it definitely, if you look at it through the lens of could any other country do this? Like, could you
Yeah,
do WSL Australia and just go that hard in the paint
on
with your
Aussie
patriotism?
surfers. Oi,
Yeah,
oi, oi.
it's really, really interesting. But whatever, I'm not I'm not personally offended by it or anything, but it is interesting.
Going in. But what are they saying about small? Do you think the surfing nation of Brazil, the proud surfing nation, is that where Felipe finds his solace of they're not going to say he can't surf big waves. They're going to say you're a champion, my boy. But I bet so
I
many of them there are like, he can't surf big waves. We love him, but he can't surf big waves.
I don't know. Well, that'd be the interesting thing is if he wins the Pipe Pro because he can ignore all the noise and just point to the accolades. And his accolades are many. And when you look at the pipe finishes that he's had some decent finishes at pipe. The caveat is it's in marginal conditions. So you and I know that caveat, but he can still point to the accolades. And I honestly, if the waves continue the way they are, he is a favorite for a win.
Oh, for sure, by far. And I mean, they will. I think this is the forecast. Is there like maybe a pulse on Wednesday or something, like an 8 to 10 foot
Yeah. Yeah, it
pulse?
might be Tuesday or Wednesday.
But isn't the wind supposed to be devilly?
I'm not sure. I haven't really looked at it. I've been in the car.
Yeah, I,
Um,
I think it's
what?
bad.
Well, the other thing I will say is Jack Robinson. I've I've always we stated I think it was last week. I had so much anticipation for Jack Robinson to get on tour, and ever since he's been on tour, I feel like he hasn't. His surfing's actually gotten worse somehow. Probably not technically, but it's just he's surfing waves that aren't great, and his style is groomed for world
Great
class
waves.
waves. And that you see that in the moment he paddles out at backdoor. Like I'd watched two or three heats before I watched his, and then he got a wave where he took off under the lip, like super late, deep, it was unbelievable. Like there's nobody else on tour, I feel. Maybe John is the only other guy who would have made that wave or even been in the position to take off in the way that he did. Anybody else would have taken off slightly, 2 feet over and gotten a six on that wave. Instead, he did what he did and he got a big score. Um, and that's what I love to see. And my other buddy was saying he's surfed all summer, I guess, with Jack at lowers, and he was not impressed ever by Jack Robinson at lowers. And I was thinking, of course not. Lowers is a soft wave. Like Jack Robinson is too good for lowers, essentially. And that's what I saw in that moment at Pipe. And so it just reminded me of what I guess we've already talked about, which is the WSL is not doing them any favors by running them in marginal surf because we get a glimpse of what he can actually do.
And we're going to see natural selection coming out here in about a month or less than a month, I think, and people are going to get a feast of actual surf. And then imagine if John and Nathan actually do go not a tour per se or not anything competitive, but they go and invite some of their buddies and go capture, epic sessions at phenomenal spots. You got to be Jack Robinson looking up and seeing the Abu Dhabi train starting to run and think, I got to get with those guys. Like time is ticking. If I don't get with those guys, I'll regret it forever. I'll regret having, squandered my prime years on this tour, on the tennis
Well,
tour.
yeah, 100%. And especially if the writing is on the wall, like we've talked about the employees of the WSL, um, who the WSL hired from the surf world to come in and kind of breathe salt into the building. And we saw them jumping ship. And we kind of had that commentary 3 years ago about, man, how long do you let it sully your reputation before you get out? And then thankfully, all of our friends have since left. Um, but with the athletes themselves, they're kind of in that position where do you want to ride it all the way to the bitter end? And if you have no other options or no other prospects, no other paychecks, you haven't built a social media following or you have no sponsor deals or whatever, then you're kind of forced to. But somebody like Jack Robinson would be wise to start creating his pivot, start creating content.
Uh, the other highlight for me was what's his name? Jan Govea. They pronounce his name Jan. Ian.
I heard that. Yeah.
Jan Govea. I'm assuming it's pronounced Jan. I'm assuming they didn't blow it that bad. But his emotional response to climbing back into the singlet after 6.5 years or whatever it was away, all my grouchiness melted away in that moment. I was like, you sweet, sweet man. Curse me for saying a bad thing about your workplace. This is where you want to be, friend. And I'm sitting throwing dirt upon it. No more. What a great, wonderful thing this all is, professional surfing.
When was the last time you cried?
I can't remember. When was the last time you cried?
Fairly recently.
Ooh,
And
about,
it felt really, really good.
were you publicly crying?
No, I don't know that I did cry in public one time, and I couldn't control it. It was at my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary, and they both had cancer and they both passed away like shortly thereafter. And so everybody kind of knew that was the last get together. And it overwhelmed me. Like I wasn't emotional before that. I didn't feel it coming on or anything like that. I just found
Whacked you.
myself in a heap of tears dancing on the dance floor. So it was like everybody could see. And that was the only time I can remember doing it in public. But yeah, I don't want to
You got Jan
discuss.
Goved.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to discuss what it was about more recently, but I realized I don't cry very often. I mean, years between crying Jags. But when it sets in, it releases exactly what you need to release, whatever sadness you're feeling, you feel better about after you purge that.
Man, I'm gonna have a good cry this afternoon as soon as this podcast is done.
I don't know what can we do to induce it.
I'll just keep watching the Jan Govea's interview on loop and keep on feeling bad about all of the junk I've talked about professional surfing and the WSL and all of it while he is working as hard as he can to get there. And I'll put enough shame upon myself, I feel, where I can burst into tears at some point.
You got to be getting pretty lonely at this part in the week.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny though, like a long drive, you find that rhythm, right? It's like the early days when you got the jitters. Uh, I mean, I remember last time I drove the long drive, like 10 hours would feel like, oh, this is no problem. Like all of a sudden hours start rolling off in like 4 hour blocks at a time where you're like, this 4 hours, I'm going to do this. And this 4 hours, I'm going to do this. And then lo and behold, you're basically where you're going to be that day. Yeah, at this point. So I'm working on another book. So I do that. I do beach grit. And then thankfully, we just had wife got scared of fire danger. And so had the tree people come and take out a couple trees. And we also had I didn't know that, the bird of paradise plant,
I
cute
do.
little thing. We had one that gotten like, it was like a clump of them that had gotten like 40 feet high. It was like humongous. I'd never seen a bird of paradise go that tall, huge. I always kind of liked it. It was like a jungle, like a massive, massive clump. So they took him out and said, "Hey, we're gonna." She was like, "How much?" Wife's like, "How much to get rid of the roots or the trunks and roots?" And they're like, $300." It's like, I got this, $300. I'm gonna do this because it's kind of like soft and squishy. Some of them are. So I'll go out there for just hours with a pickaxe, just quietly hacking away at the bird of paradise stump, then come back in and write, and then go hack bird of paradise stump. And that's literally what I've been doing for the last 4 days.
In
I've
hind
not left the house.
in hindsight, do you wish you would have just paid the $300?
No, because then I don't know what I would have done.
Okay.
A. B, it's like the perfect interlude to writing. Like I'll reach a block and then instead of, whatever, getting a drink or something unhealthy, I go and start hacking at the bird of paradise. That's A and B. C, I got calluses again on my hands. Can't remember the last time I've had calluses on my hands, which makes me feel like a real weakling. So those are back. Uh D, I wake up sore in the morning and feel a little bit like John Henry. Like
Yep.
I got some work to do today.
It's a great feeling, man.
Yeah,
Well, for those who don't listen to Noble Rot, Chaz is in this position because his wife and daughter went away for a week. So he's alone for a week and he has to fill his time. And that's why he's starting to feel lonely as well. So it's funny with the long drive leading into this for the last couple of weeks, whenever I mention it to people, if you mention it to somebody, they will share their story of a time they did a 24-hour drive to
for sure.
Idaho.
For
And
sure.
and it's like as if they're almost like a war veteran. Like they
Yeah.
went through this hardship at one point in their life and they still hold it dear. They remember the lessons that they learned from it and they're eager to share with you. You
I
know?
shared with you right away when you told me.
Totally.
I led straight in with my own. Let me tell you about my own experiences on the road, David Lee
It's a
Scales.
real band of brothers and you really figure it out when you're out there because you kind of feel like you see somebody else and you're like, I could tell just kind of by the way they're doing things, they're in this for the long haul. This isn't a local who's just going to exit at the next one. They're like
No.
locked in a fugue state, like their cars piled with stuff, or you could see wrappers from fast food or whatever. And you're just like, okay, they're locked in.
Life on the road, too, you realize, is somewhat dependent on the goodwill of others. Like when I went the first time, broke down, at a tiny little truck stop out in New Mexico. Uh, and, I had to walk and use some dude's, or I had a phone, but I had to, whatever, like walk to a gas station. He gave me a ride back. Like all of a sudden you're making connections. But if it was just like classic city life of ignore everyone, it'd be hard out there on the open road, but people are genuinely friendly. Like
Totally.
you'll get your help.
And they want to know your story, where you're
Yeah.
coming from, where you're going.
Would you have
This
dinner?
morning,
Would you have dinner at bars or or would you just like eat in your hotel room?
I've reminded on this trip how much I love America.
Yeah.
I love small town America. I love Americana. So like I will, if the options are stay in Houston or stay in Fort,
Podunk.
yeah, Fort Stockton, which is where I stayed 2 nights ago. It was like, let's stay in Fort Stockton. And I looked up a restaurant on my drive that day and it's like this steakhouse, and I'm like, sweet. Go to like a small town steakhouse where there are a bunch of steer farms nearby and yeah, just interact with the local people. So last night, to answer your question, I sat at the bar so I can get a little bit of engagement with whoever. Not, and I do talk to the bartender chick a little bit, but also just to hear what the people next to me are
Yeah.
talking about, just absorb it a little bit more that way. And last night was Lafayette, Louisiana, which I had never been to Louisiana before. Totally different than any of the other adjacent states.
I mean, I can imagine. I've never been to Louisiana either, but it feels from what I see and when I see it like a different planet.
Dude, the real estate, the houses, like in the downtown area, are beautiful, like old money probably. And but then I looked it up on Zillow. They're all under $1 million.
And
Like
this is in Lafayette?
yeah, in Lafayette. Like the $1 million in Southern California won't get you a starter home. It'll get you a condo at this point. And so there, it's a 5 bedroom house, 4,000 square feet, beautiful, modern, not like, I don't mean mid-century modern. I just mean like a
New.
modernized house. So it's just a whole different way of life and way of being. And I like it.
Could you see yourself uprooting, laying down in Lafayette? And if you did do that, uh, how much would you try to get into the community vibe? Would you like buy the local high school hat and go to high school football games and learn everybody's names at the Piggly Wiggly and give them howdy ho neighbors? Or would you just be like, I'm never, it's my ship has sailed. I am a Californian at this point. That's all I'll ever be. I'll just be a Californian living in Lafayette. I'll be kind, I'll be polite, but I ain't gonna try to go local.
It's number two. I think it would be a great scenario for a sitcom where I'm out of fish out of water for a year because
Yep.
my wife got a job that we couldn't turn down or something like that. I would entertain it for a year, but there's no way I could integrate into that society. It's like being in a different country basically.
I mean, I've realized though, in general, uh, like I had my roots cut off young, or not cut off, but like I left home at 18, never to return, right? Left the Oregon coast, left it all behind, California, blah, blah, blah. Realized that, I'm neither now. I'm from no place. I am one of the vast nomads in the world, but America specifically here, of like, there's nothing for me in Oregon, but it informed every part of my childhood. California, I love, but I'm not from here. So I'm an adult California learner. Like I came here at 18. I didn't grow up here. So it's my home, but it's where I live, but it'll never be my home. Then realizing I go anywhere and probably feel the same, right? Like a somewhat rootlessness of, yeah, this is where I am now. It's great. And so I used to look more, I don't do it as much, but I used to look at those people who are really like 4 generations in to some town and, did do all the, country fairs and blah, blah, blah. And they knew everybody. And I was just like, man, yeah, roots, that probably feels good. But at this point, I think, it's probably all feels the same. Roots probably feel crappy in their own way.
I don't know. I think about that stuff too. I do get envious when I hear about somebody who is 4 generations in and their family has some big plot of land that gets kind of added to and passed down. But I don't know where that would be for me.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be anywhere for you because I don't think you can invent that. I mean, you could try to be the paterfamilias of generation one of that. You would raise Austin in such a way where he would take over the family podcasting business and then hand it down to his son in, whatever town you're in, and then dig the roots and go to the school board meetings and all of it.
I don't know. The reason why that happened in the past is because travel was so arduous.
Yeah,
And travel's so easy now, and there's such tremendous benefit to it that I value that, I think, more than the roots thing.
yeah. I
Like
mean,
I had lunch today in Biloxi, Mississippi,
mm,
and it was like,
what'd you
l-
eat? Did you get some good Southern food?
no, I got it was like a ham sandwich with brie and an onion jam
Mm,
and an apple. There was like a thin slice of apple on there, arugula. It was very good. But my point was just I want to pull off in Biloxi just to see what the small town looks like. And each of them have their own little character and charm, but I don't need to stay. I don't need to be
yeah,
there for a long time. I would do like a romantic getaway with my wife there, but that's
to
it.
Biloxi.
Yeah.
But the food, I'll tell you, where does Southern food rank on your favorite foods? Have we talked about this specifically?
No, we haven't. It ranks high.
Man, Southern food might be, I think the best meal I've ever had in my life was in Memphis, Tennessee, where I rocked into the hotel. Dude asked me if I'd eaten dinner yet. I said no. He said, didn't give me an option. He said, you have to go here and gave me directions. I walked there. Dude looked at me when I came in and I was like looking at what to order. And he said, no, and just made me a giant plate of food. Said, here, this is what you're eating. And it was amazing, like catfish and, collard greens. And there was brisket and like it was everything, every Southern thing that I love. And it was just heaven.
It's hard to drive through the South or visit without
Overindulging,
overindulging. Yeah.
especially when you're driving, because you don't want to get in your car. I would save my one like meal of the day for the evening when driving was done. Because if you have a big, huge old lunch, so, I mean, I guess that's where you lean on the Red Bull to get you through.
Yeah. No, but like when I picked up that sandwich, that place is known for biscuits. And so I'm like,
Oh,
well, I need a sandwich, but you know what I also kind of need is a biscuit. Let's get a
yeah.
biscuit on the side. And I actually didn't end up doing that, but that's where you find yourself in the South. You just keep adding on all that stuff because it's what they're known for, you know?
How much is your mental calculus when you're driving about when you're going to eat next, what you're going to eat next? Are you going to stop and eat? Are you going to just get it to go? Like, I feel anytime I'm on the road, it will take up like 50% of my driving time will be thinking about when and where and how to eat.
Well, so much so that I'm literally on my phone on Yelp looking at restaurants for 6 hours from now at dinner
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
so that I have it all mapped out and I'm looking at the menu and everything, you know?
Yeah.
So, yes, it 100% is that way for me. Well, getting back to the show, I've got a follow up from last week's Don't Say Gay.
Ooh, great.
We talked about the heart of hearts and
Yes.
asked for a cardiologist to chime in. Well, guess what, Chaz? Here we go.
Ask and receive on this show.
Ask and receive. Dear DLS and Chaz, I'm reaching out as a listener and physician who is delighted this week to find an unexpected overlap between my worlds of clinical medicine and surfing. I have three options for you related to your heart of hearts inquiry. As you astutely mentioned, the heart is composed of four separate chambers, two atria and two ventricles. The atomic center point of the heart would indeed be the muscular wall separating the ventricles, known as the interventricle septum. If you wanted to go a little deeper, buried within this wall is a bundle of hiss, the sound like a snake makes, but it's spelled his, H-I-S, which is a collection of nerve fibers that conduct the electrical impulses through your heart that lead to a regular synchronized heartbeat. So our two options so far are interventricle septum or
Um,
bundle of his.
Bundle of his is for sure like the electrical center point in the center of your heart. I don't know how you beat that,
You
but I'm
don't, you don't. But
listening.
I'm going to carry on. He says, finally, you might also consider the left atrial appendage, a small outpouching from the left atrium. While not the most central part of the heart anatomically, the left atrial appendage is sort of a sac within the chamber. So it might also fit the meaning of this phrase as well. To drop a little extra knowledge on you and your listeners out there, many strokes that result from a common arrhythmia called atrial fibrillation are in fact due to a left atrial appendage. Small blood clots can form in this area of the heart because it is so deep and isolated that the blood doesn't move around that much, which in turn leads to clot formation. When this clot eventually does come out of the appendage, it goes into the circulation with the rest of the blood, where it can unfortunately travel into the brain and lead to a stroke. Some of our newest interventions to prevent stroke in atrial fibrillation without the need of lifelong blood thinners involve blocking off this sac mechanically and thus removing the nidus for clot formation in the first place. Many thanks for my heart of hearts. Many thanks from my heart of hearts for all that you do each week. Keep up the work. Jay Z, MD and Associate Professor of Clinical Medicine, University of California.
Amazing. Jay-Z, thank you so very much. Can't thank you enough. And bundle of his, we can't beat that, but it's pronounced bundle of hiss, I'm hearing. He said hiss like a snake, spelled H-I-S. Okay. So the bundle of hiss, like that hit me right in my bundle of hiss. Like
Exactly.
this is the best replacement phrase yet.
Um, In my bundle of hiss, I just really feel like you should have that conversation with your wife and tell her how you feel.
It's perfection. We need to normalize, and we as a group of listeners, as a community, have to get this as the phrase of the year. You know how, whatever the Webster, whichever the dictionaries I think have their phrase or word of the year. We have to do enough work 2025 to get bundle of hiss referring to your heart of hearts as the phrase or word of the year.
So it sounds better, number one. Number two, I like that it creates a little confusion. You say it to the
Yeah.
person and they just get this look on their face like a dog that heard, some dog whistle that only they can hear. And then the third thing is it inquires them or it requires them to inquire, which is now educational. So
Yep.
now everybody has a little bit extra information about how the heart operates and little information like this about
For
uh,
stroke prevention.
prevention. Yeah,
when I
exactly.
when I'm going to drop this one, and when somebody says, "What does that mean?" I'm going to say, "Well, so in the very middle of your heart, there's some whatever nerves and
Bundle of nerves.
bundle of nerves, and they are called the bundle of His is how it's pronounced, but it's spelled His. Importantly for your health, though, and then go into the bit about the little sac heart, the little fake heart that's making clots.
So the bundle of his is a collection of nerve fibers that conduct the electrical impulses through your heart that lead to the regular synchronized heartbeat.
I mean, that is the heart of hearts if I've ever heard of it.
Completely. So thank you, and you are welcome. Now we have another inquiry for the Don't Say Gay segment.
Can't wait for it.
This one's pretty good. It's been sitting right in front of us for the last couple, maybe year or two, and we
Is
didn't
it
even notice it.
is it going to be offensive for you to say out loud?
No, it's
Okay,
not.
great.
It's a little crude, but it's not racially offensive or
Okay.
offensive in the other ways that we have already done. Okay. Hey, gentlemen, Chris in Maine, a different one. I've got a submission for you. He says a different one because there is a Chris in Maine that calls in and writes in. So I love that this number two
Is
is
a different
around,
one. Chris and Maine, parentheses, a different one.
and they're actually near in the same area, Portland. And I asked him, I'm like, do you know Chris from Maine number one? Because I actually do. He went to El Salvador with us in
Yeah.
2024. And this Chris in Maine said, no, I don't. He goes, maybe I know him. I don't know. But no, I don't know him specifically. Or we've never had a conversation, about who we are as it relates to the podcast. He goes, it's a pretty small town.
Yeah.
So maybe I would know him. But so I thought that was funny that he's picked up on there is another Chris in Maine.
Yes. Love it.
Okay. Hey, gentlemen, don't say gay. A couple of sayings I've heard quite a lot lately: raw dogging and balls deep. I know the references are just going for it and going all in, but I'm kind of shocked to hear these thrown around in mixed company. So, oh, he gives me another barrel or knob, but we don't have to address that. Please discuss and work. If you ever want to do a podcast venue, if you need a podcast venue in Maine, I work for a brewery in Portland and we have a great event space for it. So,
Love it. I would love to go to Portland, Maine to begin with. I've never been to Maine. It is always a state I wanted to visit. I do believe that the Maine state bird is the puffin, which is a good call. But anyway, fully agree in terms of the uh unnecessary grossness here, right? Or the unnecessary, not grossness. I'm going to say the unnecessary graphicness to describe something that is not unnecessarily graphic. Like there are phrases and words for giving it your all, right? Or for example, a classic that never gets old, give her hell, right? Or man, he's giving him hell or she's giving him hell, right? Good kind of World War II veneer on that one. Uh, balls deep or raw dogging is just like going from 0 to 100, skipping by 60, 70, 80, and 90, just to go to the max of like, huh? It's,
your
yeah,
your
like,
head slams the back, it slams the
yes,
headrest. Your
yeah.
stomach gets sucked up a little bit. It's like it throws you.
Whoa. Yeah. And I'm all about, again, language. As you know, my stated point is language does what it does. We're not to try to stop it that much or direct it that much. But in these cases, I think this is where you step in because I don't think this is ubiquitous yet in a broader. I totally agree with uh wait, is it Chris?
Yeah, Chris in Maine,
Yeah,
number
Chris
two.
and Maine too. Um, that it's being used though in mixed company where it shouldn't be used in any company, to be quite frank, unless your company is porn. But outside of that, we should just scrub this one. I'm gonna say don't say either of these iterations. There's better ways to say it. And this one hasn't taken hold enough yet where this one could be rooted out. I think
It,
if you shame somebody a little bit, if you're like, oh, come on. If somebody says, ah, raw dog in that, and it's be like, were you though? Sounds like you
see,
were giving him hell.
so I'm going to split with you a little bit here. For me, let's throw out balls deep. Definitely never have to hear balls deep again. I agree with you entirely. There's other phrases that are meant for, going all in, let's say.
Yes.
Um, Raw dogging, on the other hand, I feel like that's about something else. That's about like doing something without any uh like preparation or protection, right? And
Yep.
so that is defining something different. So those two phrases aren't interchangeable. And raw dog, and I feel, is less crass, and it actually has a little bit more broader sensibility. I like it. I want to keep it. There's nothing else. There's no other phrase that I could think of that we use in that exact context. And so I kind of like it.
I'm gonna like it more though. I will say this. I don't know. I am a linguist, but I don't know if I'm gonna imagine raw dogging came from somewhere else and then was applied uh carnally, right?
I think you might be right.
Which so then because I like the way raw dogging sounds.
What if it was for eating a hot dog with no condiments?
I love that'd be so good. I'm gonna start using it as that, in fact. Man, that dude is raw dog and he's just going straight at it. Doesn't care. Doesn't care about the consequences of eating a pretty gross hot dog without the joys of ketchup and mustard on top.
And then somebody started using it, like you said,
Yeah.
carnally.
I like the eating a hot dog, except the problem is eating a hot dog without ketchup or condiments is not good.
No, it isn't good.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. I didn't think about that. Um, okay,
It-
so I'm keeping raw dog for
okay.
all those reasons.
I'm going to be on the fence about I'm gonna do a little more research about raw dog. I will report back next episode with that one, seeing what the actual etymology is.
You're gonna raw dog the research?
I'm gonna raw dog the research, going straight
Okay.
in. Not gonna have any protection.
All right, I can't wait. That's a new segment, raw dog and the
Yeah.
research. Presented by, we need a sponsor.
We do need a sponsor. It can't be a condom sponsor either.
It could be a booze sponsor for that
It,
one.
it could be.
Salento Tequila, are you out there? Okay. Somebody needs advice from us.
Good. Good.
I need to pull up the call, which I did not do in advance. Bear with me.
I feel we haven't given advice in too long, to be quite frank.
We've had bulky shows, man. I've had multiple calls sitting here waiting week after week. We just don't have time to get to them sometimes.
I got
But
those
now we do.
calls on Noble Rot too, and I'm gonna get to them this week.
Okay, cool. Well, this is one listener calling in with VAER. Tools to Live By, presented by VAER Watches. Chaz has his newest and latest there.
Brand new,
I've got
brand
mine right
new,
here.
ticking like a watch.
Go to VAERwatches.com/surf splendor and get 15% off. And unrelated entirely, you could do that on your own. But then if you need advice from us ever, you can call it in and we will address it here.
Real quick, before we get to the advice bit, I have one more. I said my new VAER watch ticks along like a watch, right? Which made me think about the wildfire devastation in Southern California. Uh, the poetic language that journalists would try, they would say, it looks, Palisades looks like a bomb dropped there. Palisades looks like it, got destroyed by a tsunami. I was thinking, why in the world are you using like metaphors that people have never realized or seen when you could just call it what it actually is? It looks like it got burned out by fire, like a
Right.
giant firestorm came and ripped it up, because that's what happened. That's what it is. We don't need, it looks like a bomb. How many people have been in a war zone?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. They don't know what that looks like either.
Yep.
That is funny.
But
Um,
back to the advice.
well,
Important stuff.
back to your watch is ticking like a bundle of his.
Yeah, it sure is.
There you go. Okay. Back to listener call.
David, Chaz, this is for the grit. This is Jojo from the North calling. I just got out of a sauna. I've been doing it for decades, and I've never experienced something like this. This lady who she was somewhat unattractive, which made it all the worse. I hate to sound shallow, but it just did. She was doing these breathing techniques and doing these weird, awkward stretches right in the middle of the sauna. And everyone just awkwardly taking it in, probably super annoyed. And she just keeps doing it. This went on for 25 minutes. I've never seen anything like it. Usually it's a place of peace and quiet and, you know, maybe the odd whisper. I think that's pretty self-explanatory for most people. Anyway, this was insane, and I just had to call in and get your guys' take on it. I mean, sauna etiquette, doing anything that's obviously selfish and obnoxious to the other people in the group or the sauna who were there. Maybe I'm the kook and she's the Curran and she's getting all zenned out. Who knows? Anyway, just thought I'd share. Keep up the work, boys.
As a man who has accosted adults on trains,
Yes.
please advise how to interject here,
Oh my
intervene.
goodness. I mean, so there's different sauna culture around the world, right?
Mm,
Whether they're onsens in Japan or saunas in Finland or, like we'll call it more broadly bath culture, where we can, be specific about the sauna. But I think these rules apply more broadly to bath culture, uh, where it is maximum importance. This is the place to go along to get along. You do not do anything different than anyone else is doing, right? So I know that in many cultures, sauna is a nude thing, right? If that's what that sauna is, do not go in with your board shorts. You are being a weirdo. You go along, get along. If people are, if it's like more an Americanized one and people are wearing towels or even trunks or whatever, then wear towels or trunks. Don't go in there naked. Just be like, oh, I have been to Finland and they do it naked there, so I'm doing it here, right? Like, go along to get along. This woman was not going along and getting along. And Jojo from the North, he sounded Canadian. So he might be simply too nice, but should have said, the group would have appreciated it, said, hey, lady, not here, not now, right? You're looking for a fight, of course. You're always looking for a fight. That's the thing. But if you're not going to really fight back, it's okay. You said your piece. They can start screaming and yelling. That'll look bad, right? But you could just say, hey, you don't have to. I think people think once you mention something that you're committed to see it through to the fighting end. And you are absolutely not. You are only responsible for saying the thing that needs to be said, right? Now, if it leads to a confrontation where other people are getting hurt or something, then you better step in and take care of business, right? But the idea of I don't want to get into a fight, so I'm not going to say something. You can say something without getting into a fight. A fight takes two people. If you refuse to fight, it's not a fight.
it's really surprisingly good advice. I was giving this advice to somebody else recently, and I'm realizing it relates to this now, but it is remove the emotionality from it.
Yeah,
And usually, if it gets to the point of you vocalizing something, it's because you're
you're pent up.
you're worked
Yes.
up emotionally. So if that gets triggered in you, and you realize you do want to intervene or say something for the greater good of the little microcosm of society right there in that moment, remove your emotion before you say it. Because
Yep.
if you can then engage on that level, and the other person is going to respond emotionally, she's going to snap and say something back to you.
Free
Well, she's
country.
then
It's Canada.
she's going to look stupid at that point because you're
Yeah.
being calm and you're unemotional about it. So like Chaz said, if you could say your piece, hey, just for the greater good of this group, we'd all appreciate it if you, the one person who's doing something totally deviant from anybody else, would just
Would
knock
you?
it off. We'd
Yeah. Would you
appreciate that.
mind?
Yeah,
Yeah.
would you mind?
Totally.
We would appreciate that. No matter where they go from there, you're absolved because you're calm and unemotional.
Yeah, I mean and I feel for everyone, it's good practice, right? It's both good practice to be able to and I think this is a problem with American culture, particularly, is people only wait until they're gonna explode to say something to somebody, and then of course that elicits the reaction of explosion back, right? If we all did a lot better of you or group saying to woman, you're being deviant here. And woman looking around and realizing, oh, I am. And this is a time to go along with the group and not exercise my individual rights, right? There's times and places to exercise my, God-given freedoms. That time and place is not a sauna where everyone is doing the same thing.
You, the older I get, the more I'm kind of considering that there's a lot more mental health issues that exist in our society than I was ever aware of before. And I don't mean to say that to like write off bad behavior, because I do think that people are still responsible for their own behavior.
It's
But
true
I
to be
think,
sensitive.
yeah, I think what's compelling that woman to do that isn't selfishness. It's not, like there's something else going on there. And so I think a part of me used to feel a need, and probably is well documented on this show through the advice and my answer to Beryl or Nas. A part of me wants to shame people to correct the bad behavior. Go ahead.
I mean, I was going to say though, I hear you, but in this case, there's a way to do it without overtly shaming. She might feel a bit of shame that her stuff has been pointed out, but there's a way to do it somewhat politely.
Yeah. And now that I consider the mental health aspect of it, she likely won't receive it as politely.
No, she won't.
It likely will become an outburst and an emotional reaction, but I'm a lot more sympathetic to, and I guess that me saying I'm sympathetic towards the mental health aspect doesn't mean I wouldn't
Say
confront her
something.
in this. Yeah, I might still confront her and say something, but I have a lot less, I guess, of my own emotional reaction to things now because I realize life is freaking hard. And like, especially in Southern California, like we've talked about this a lot lately, but it's just expensive and it's challenging. And then you have some health issue maybe that you're dealing with a parent or a loved one, and all of that manifests in road rage or in acting out in these little ways. And it's so congested that when you have that many people constantly going through their own little things every single day, the pressure is tense.
And I appreciate your sensitivity and will try to back it up. Like different, I feel on the streets or, I think there's for sure, we should give each and every one, a lot more grace. We should also be each and every one a lot less self-involved. Like, again, we've talked about it a bunch on the show. Pick up your feet when you're crossing the street. You don't need to take all 24 seconds to get across the street. You just don't. There's other people in this world besides you. And lady, maybe you do got a little mental thing going on, but shore it up enough to know that this is not the time and place to be outwardly crazy, right? I know that it's easier said than done, but again, it's a sauna. This is a sacred spot. If you can't handle your business there appropriately, then maybe take your crazy elsewhere.
Well, I think we did actually solve something here. My what takeaways are: it is okay to confront, do it unemotionally, and then also have more sympathy, have more grace for people when those things do pop up. They're ultimately, we're in such a compact, congested society at this point, they are going to pop up all the time. When I encountered these once a month as a kid, I am now encountering them daily and
Yeah, it's
sometimes
true.
multiple times a day. And
It's true.
so this strategy, I think, will help you navigate through.
Yes. Well said.
Whew, man, emotional work here.
Yeah,
Uh,
hard, but that's for the people. It's what we
it,
do.
it it's hey, tools to live by. VAER watches, baby.
From my bundle of his to yours.
Exactly. I really felt that came direct from your throbbing bundle of his.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go to commercial break and we will be back with Barrel or Nah. All right, Chaz, welcome back.
Looking forward to getting into it.
Well, let's go with a surfing barrel or not to
I
get the
can't
show
believe it. I can't
back
believe it.
into the surf space. Um, Barrel or not, waxing your board in a specific pattern. Like,
I'm gonna say no barrel. I'm gonna think about Ron from board porn. I'm gonna say no barrel. It shows, uh, especially in the case of like Ron, shows some mental deviance, right? I think you could look at anybody with a fancy wax job and say there's something wrong mentally, Ron. Like you don't have to tell us what it is, Ron, but I know from looking at your boards.
could it just mean that they are got a little obsessive compulsive?
Yeah, could mean that, and I would say, um, I would totally back the OCD-ness of it if it was functional at all. That wax job doesn't do anything more or less than the crappiest. It does more than like no wax, but if you take a board with a crappy wax job, but that's it's waxed, and then that geometric wax job, same diff, man. Where like ballet, daughter's got a touch, if not more than the touch of the OCD. And ballet is a great vehicle for it, right? But all the stuff that goes into it, like the tying of the point shoes, the fussiness is all functional with the ballet itself. I'm gonna say the fancy wax job is totally extraneous to surfing, and once again signals mental health issues. Ron from
Well,
Portland.
to be clear, I'm not talking about where you put that layer of plastic adhesive that has some pattern built into it, and then you wax on that and it has like a swirl or something.
Oh, that's what I was talking about.
That is a different, that is definitely an indicator of something. I'm talking about, I have a sequence that I do. I go nose to tail. I do base coat first,
Oh
nose
yeah.
to tail, rail to rail, and then circles. So I'll do the entire deck of the board, nose to tail in swoops like that. And then once I'm done with that
Oh
layer, I
yeah.
go rail to rail, the entire length of the board. And then I go circles, and that beads up into what I have found to be the best kind of consistent shape beads.
If I recall from my tour at Sticky Bumps really invented the surf wax as we know it, or modern surf wax. It was that exact prescription of nose to rail, circle.
So that's all base coat. And then I go over it again with a regular coat, nose to rail, and circles once again. And that gives the perfect traction. But in the aforementioned Jordy Smith clip on the North Shore this week, his little B roll before he goes out, he's just waxing his board and he says specific, he turns to the camera and he goes, there's no right way to apply wax. You just rub
Yeah,
some on there and it works. I'm
I'm
like,
1,000% with Jordy Smith.
I've been wasting my time maybe all
Yeah, you
along.
have been. You have been. Yep.
All right.
I'm with Jordy. Even though I think that the tail to tail, rail trail, but it is true. Wax on the surface of your board, whether you got those perfect bumps or whether it's just kind of like, as long as it's not that slippy mat, right? When your wax can turn flat on you, but any kind of bump on there is providing the exact same level of traction. You're not going to surf better because you have better bumps.
Somebody sent a screenshot a few weeks ago. I think it was the deck of Mason Ho's board. And it was like the thinnest layer of wax I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like he just barely grazed the deck with like the corner of the bar of wax. And their caption said, "Is this a kook and Curran?" Just
Mm.
like having like little to no wax on your board. Because every intermediate surfer takes the wax job seriously, but a kook doesn't know any better. And then the Curran apparently knows this thing that I was unaware of, which is you don't need a lot of wax.
I would need for this to be considered, I would need one more because Mason is such an outlier
Yeah.
himself. I would
Yeah.
need one more like high level pro doing this.
Yeah. I have to check out Tom Curran's boards.
Yeah. And but I could say if like Taj Burrow is doing this too. If it's Mason and Taj, then I'd say, okay, let's discuss this because for sure intermediates don't do this.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess all my boards already have the beaded up wax on them, but the next board I get, I'm going to go just the Jordy Smith
Scribble.
style and just scrub it on.
I scribble.
See what happens.
I scribble my base coat, just scribble, 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 and then quick scribble with wax and then circle. So
Yeah.
scribble, scribble, circle.
All right. Well, I guess we're divided.
Yep.
Okay, barrel or nah? Giving up on a book after reading more than 50%. Quote, I've recently been disappointed by a book and decided to abandon my attempt to finish it after reading around 2/3 of it. Is this acceptable? Should I have persevered just in case it was going to get epic? Surely, if the first 66% hasn't hooked me, I am well within my rights to give up. If not 50%, where should you put the limit?
Barrel, I'm going to say straight up barrel. It's also barrel to stand up in the theater and stomp out of a movie if it stinks halfway through. It is barrel to voice your displeasure and not to give any, not to run out of a concert if the player's crap, right? Like all of these things are your right. It is the people who are like perpetually, either with food or music or anything of I bought it, so now I'm going to finish it, right? Like, so wait, you're just going to torture yourself more for the sake of money, I guess, that you spent money on something. So wouldn't it be that much greater to, money's gone already, but just to toss the thing too. I say, take that book and huck it across your room, but do it angrily. Don't like say, I think you got to be reading your book, slam the cover, throw it at the wall.
Write a terrible review about it.
Yeah. Go to Amazon.com.
Well, I mean, the reality, I think the truth is you absolutely can quit the book because when has it ever worked the other way? When did you ever get to the final page and get the reveal and go, oh my God, that made the other 300 pages all worthwhile? That's never happened.
I feel like I've gotten through some where there was a twist that like 3/4 through, then I thought, oh, I think it was, might have been, I don't think it was good, but it was Ellis. B
Bret Easton Ellis.
Bret Easton Ellis's Lunar Park. And I was
Oh, yeah.
just, it's like one of his lesser known, not good ones. And I was like stumbling along and 3/4 of the way through, like there was a twist in the plot that happened. And then it made me go back and kind of rethink it. And then I finished it. It didn't make the book good, but it did make it finishable.
Lunar Park is one that I actually quit early on, not 50% through.
See, there we go.
But I think my point is the twist alone doesn't make the whole book worth reading.
No.
And so there had to be something in the artistry or the prose, or if it's a movie, just the aesthetic of the movie that made it worthwhile to get to the twist down the road. But you can't hinge everything on the big twist at the end or just one element because it needs to captivate you in multiple ways.
And I will say this, this is different for adults than children. I think there is value in forcing your kid to read a crappy book all the way through. Just if they've started it, just to teach them, hey, you start something, you finish it kind of thing, right?
Well, totally, yeah. Kids don't know what they like and don't like. And so you
Yeah.
want to force exposure. And there's another thing going on, which is just discipline there. But if you're
Yeah.
a grown adult and you have the discipline to finish a book, and you also know that you have certain preferences and styles that you like, and you realize,
Abandon,
yeah,
jump
you
ship.
realize 100 pages in, this is not tickling your fancy, ditch it, throw it in the fireplace, actually.
Throw in the fireplace, because not only are you wasting your time, you're wasting the opportunity to read a good book. Like
Well,
that time is going to be spent reading a crap book, that all that time could be spent reading a good book.
To your other point of finish eating the thing because you bought it or whatever it is, wasted calories. Like,
Yeah.
don't finish eating it. If you didn't like it, do not waste the eat something you do like,
Yes.
So I agree across all of those points.
Barrel.
All right, barrel. Yeah, barrel. Get rid of it. Final barrel or not. Saying thanks, ... for nothing. Hello, DLS and Chaz. Barrel or not, browsing a retail shop, buying nothing, and then thanking the clerk or owner upon leaving the store. I was bouncing around some shops in downtown San Luis Obispo with my wife, and I noticed her say thank you as we left a store empty-handed. We had a brief chat about this outside, and she said that it's important to be polite. She is polite, but I still wasn't sold on that as the rationale or the idea, or that idea was the most appropriate way to exit a building. Then, when we were at a record store, I browsed through albums, but didn't pull the trigger on anything. And then, sure enough, upon exiting, my consciousness left my body and I watched myself say thank you to the store clerk. So, how did this happen? How have we been programmed to do this? Why did I feel compelled to utter those words in a store that I liked, but not in a store that my wife liked? Seriously, help work, Matt.
Okay, I got you, Matt. I'm going barrel on both of these in terms of in the first case, did the store person say thanks or did wife say thanks?
The wife turned to the store owner and said thanks
Thanks.
when she was leaving.
Okay, I'm gonna say barrel in both cases. In terms of store, you're going to somebody's curated space, right? Whether or not I mean, it'd be one thing, I suppose, if you were going into which I don't think, I've never certainly done this. You haven't done this. You wouldn't do this. Go into a Trader Joe's, wander the aisle, and then say thanks when you were leaving, right?
Correct.
That
Yeah.
is a generic situation. But if you're going into a store, and the types of stores I'm picturing here are like, you know, one off, one of a kind, brick and mortar, obviously, so somebody curated this space, right? You wandering around, and whether you buy something or not, showing appreciation for what they have done in this space, or, for their time working, whatever. I think you're not saying this was the greatest 5 minutes of my life. I would like to humbly thank you so much. Just you're throwing off a thanks. And I think there is thanks there. You got to walk around and look at something for a certain amount of time that had value to your day.
So I wasn't sure how I felt when I first read this email because I do think it's a little silly. Like it's just you're just trying to be polite because you're in a close proximity to this other human being and you just want to acknowledge their existence as you're exiting. So thanks seems like the most appropriate thing to do. But now that I think about it more deeply, I think you're right. If I come in here and don't buy anything, I owe you a thanks because
Yeah.
you're spending money just to be here. You're paying
Yeah.
rent, whatever. I came into your environment. I
It's
absorbed some of the experience. I owe you a thanks. But if I buy something, now you
no
owe
thanks
me a
needed.
thanks.
Yeah.
No, it's the
Yeah.
opposite. You owe me a thanks.
Yes, exactly. I hear you. That's perfect. That is the perfect solution right there. And again, this only goes for mommy poppy kind of one-off stores, right? We're not talking about you going into Costco, wandering around, leaving, and then saying thank you to the greeter. Like, unnecessary. Don't
Yeah.
need to do it. Like, that guy, you don't need, I mean, you can acknowledge that guy coming in.
Give them a have a nice day.
Yeah, have a nice day. See you later, you can even say to one of those stores. But yeah, the thanks, reserve it for the mom and pop.
Totally agree. It's funny. These things are laying right in front of our face. Like I've felt awkward about the thank you myself so many times over the years, never once thought about it at the forefront of my mind, like the listener presented it to us today.
Thankfully, I haven't had one for quite some time, but the thing that I would hate myself for saying, I did it like once or twice and then mentally taught myself not to do it, is say thanks when you're getting a speeding ticket.
Oh, interesting.
When the officer hands you and you just have such the route, thanks. And then you're like, you want to get out of the car. Yeah, I know it's not thanks. This is not thanks.
That is funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been in that situation.
See, I'm just telling you, prepare now because if it happens, no, you got to say no matter what, no matter how nice this cop is, unless he lets me off. If he lets me off, he's getting a thanks. But if he's giving me a ticket, even if he's like chitty chatty, like, oh, seems like you're a long way from home. Well, how was the drive? Nice day today. You really like your car. Got a beautiful family in there. Here's your ticket. Hard not to say thanks after the chitty chat because you're playing along with that chitty chat to
Yeah,
get out of
yeah, yeah.
that ticket. But once the ticket is foregone, take it quick and glare.
What if you just say no, thank you?
Yeah. I
He
mean,
tries to hand you the ticket and you just say no, thanks.
then I think he arrests you for being whatever it's called, being uh what's it called?
Obstinate, the
Obstinate.
offense of obstinance.
Yes.
Um, Austin says no, please.
Oh, nice. When he doesn't want something.
Yeah, like I'll be like, hey man, you want a glass of water? No, please. And I've learned cute things like that go away and you miss them.
Yeah.
So I don't correct him.
No, never
I
correct.
definitely not. So no, please is like the funny, cute thing at the moment.
They all go away so quick and then they're gone forever.
I know. Um, the what was I going to tell you about that? I had another final thought on the shop owner. Might have been related to getting a speeding ticket.
The thanks, like I mean,
It escaped.
thanks is a real landmine though, of like the or the U2, right? Like getting onto the plane where the ticket taker says "Have a nice flight" and you say "You too."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All of those. It's like the throwaway thanks you too, blah 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 blah. There's peril in there.
I remembered what I was going to say. What is your prepared statement for if somebody knocks on the bathroom door that you are in?
Oh yeah. I'll just say like, I'll just make a sound. Hey, I don't
My
say in use. I don't say I'm in here. I just
I'm
say,
here.
yeah, I just say, hey,
Um, I prepared a statement a decade or two ago that now is instinctual and it's
this is going to be
occupied.
essential. What is it? Oh, it's
Occupied.
occupied. That's what you say.
Just the
Occupied.
word occupied.
Occupied seems so much more. It's would have been good a decade ago, maybe, but it seems too formal now.
Works for me, man.
Occupied. It
It's
sounds too. I don't want it. I don't want my voice to be audible for that long. That's why I'll throw, hey,
yeah.
quick, easy, done.
Well, stick with yours. I'll stick with mine. I've found
Man,
occupied works for me because I want to be innocuous. I want there to be a formality. I don't want them to necessarily identify me. It's just this curt occupied.
I
They
really
don't,
hate it. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it as a barrel gnaw or using the bathroom at other people's houses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The times this happens, or like, in somebody's house, particularly, uh, if the door's stinking closed, don't knock for pity's sake, especially if this is a house party or whatnot. Linger. You can see, if there's somebody in there, they're going to come out. If there's nobody in there, they're not going to come out, right? Like if you wait for 5 minutes, then you can knock. But there's no need to knock on a closed bathroom door in a house.
you know what the problem is? We've all been burned. Like I've been in the scenario where the door's closed, light on, and I'm like, I gotta pee so bad, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. Then finally I realize nobody's actually
Nobody's
in
in
there.
there.
And you're like, what idiot at this party doesn't know protocol for the
Yeah.
door? The protocol is wide open, light off, fair game, go in there.
Yep.
Door barely ajar, fan going, enter at your own risk.
Yeah. That's
Door,
true.
door closed, light on, don't go in.
That's
Somebody's in
true.
there. And those are the only three options. Anything else that you're doing it
Is
wrong.
you
You're sending the
you
wrong
need to be
signal to the party.
you need to be corrected by somebody at the party. You need to be told, like the woman in the sauna, hey, you got to stop this. You got
Exactly.
to do the right thing here, man.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Well,
that's the final bit of
essentially.
advice for today, I suppose.
Great. Well, you enjoy your well-deserved rest after 3 monster days behind the wheel.
30 hours, 31 hours, I think, of total drive time.
Man, sweet. Feels
Crazy.
so good.
Well, from my bundle of hiss,
Yes.
I appreciate you adjusting your timeline to accommodate the show today.
Anytime.
Okay. All right. Well, until next week.
Keep working.